see you move like that. Like what? Like that. Let me see you move like that. Just like that.
We start with this exclusive announcement, Dean. Gone out to press today. Liveramp and Co-op are working together, partnered together. A space that's been dominated for 2 decades by 2 major players within the UK market. New entrants coming to the market, new ways of working, Amazon, Apple, lots of different players talking about retail media. So grocer, retailer. Dean, first question for you is, where do you see the opportunities in this space for new grocers or retailers entering the market? Because this is that moment where innovation can leapfrog.
Yeah. Well, as you said, Tesco and Nectar have been in this space a long time. They've got a high household penetration. They've got experience of making loyalty easy to join, appealing to join, and keeping it in there. But I checked this morning, actually, on the Kantar data, and the average number of grocery retailers a shopper visits in a month is 5.2. So loyalty in its purest sense doesn't really exist in grocery. Everyone's shopping everywhere. So the opportunity for all those other grocers to similarly acquire, have an appealing loyalty program and capture that data is still there. So the opportunity is there. There's not a market monopoly on data that Tesco and Nectar have. But I suppose the big thing isn't just on getting the data. It's not like the CMOs just want to have this stack of virtual data and dance around it really happily. You've got to be able to actually put it to good use. You've got to get value from it. So it's not just about collecting it, storing it. It's having a way to make sure it adds value to your loyalty base, the brands, and you as a retailer as well.
Helen.
Yeah, no, what I would say is yes, I think if you don't have a loyalty program as a retailer, you're probably a bit behind the curve, to be honest. But on the flip side, I'd also say it's never too late to get going. So being very candid, when I started working on our Morrisons partnership, I was quite surprised at the scale that Morrisons has with Morecard, and critically, to your point, to the addressability of that scale, even though it came decades later after Clubcard and Nectar. I think for me, there's 2 points, however, that a retailer really needs to think through with regards to their loyalty schemes. So the first one is, what's going to be your differentiated point in the market? I always say you need to win the right to be in the shopper's wallet or on the shopper's phone nowadays. And, we've seen a move, I think, in the last 6 months where it's just been, maybe that's the way to unlock cheaper prices, but I'd argue it needs to be a lot more. And I think Co-op is a really good example of that, whereby, they've really tapped into actually what's really important to our members and what's meaningful for them. And, the tie-ins with the local communities and the donations you can give when you buy Co-op branded products is a really nice example of that. And then there's one thing getting a shopper's data. There's another thing really, I say, retaining that and retaining it in a way that's useful for people to activate against. So once you've got your proposition, I think you need to think about what's that long-term relationship you want to build with that shopper. And it's a value equation, right? It's, we really respect that we've got your data and we're able to use it in different ways that can better serve you, but also what are you giving back to the shopper in return for that? And those are the 2 things, so the proposition, but then ongoing, what's that long-term relationship you want to build?
Yeah, and I was going to say, and it's great for the shopper. So if you think about traditional loyalty programs, the incentive for the retailer was usually share of wallet of those shoppers, and now there's obviously these other income streams that are available from that win-win between a brand and a retailer's collaboration. So that's going to make even more reason for retailers to really win that shopper through their loyalty offering and that proposition, and differentiating it now as that 2 reasons for making sure you've got a strong offer in the market.
Super interesting. Actually, I think this ties into this next question, but to your point about the value for the shopper, let's talk about the CPG agenda when it comes to retailers or grocers. Every CPG has this one question: when do I get unfettered access to data? How do I understand what products are being sold in store? How do I understand how many products are being bought, customer lifetime value? How can I build audiences attached to that? Not inside a walled garden. How do I do it inside my own infrastructure whether that's a clean room, whether that's a bunker, whatever that is, but how do I get access to that data? Do you see a world where that's going to happen? Because I personally do, but I'm selfishly biased when it comes to that, being CPG. What's your thoughts, Dean?
I think if you look at some of the big global brands like your Unilevers and P&Gs, they're really leading the way in making their data more accessible to their own teams and wanting that clarity across different retailers and distributions, and there's increasing pressures on those retailers to allow them to have that. I think there's going to be a sense of, at least in the short term, a bit of control and guardedness from retailers, but I'm for one convinced it's the right way to go, and collaboration will. I think it's unavoidable, to be honest, as you say, but I think it's the right way to go, and I think a key to that is ease. So having technologies and infrastructure in place to make sure it's easy to do, because it's not like any retailer can just switch on data transparency or collaboration. There's work behind the scenes in data enablement, and like I say, partnerships to make that easier. So I think as those become more dominant in the marketplace, that will help guide that forwards. And then I'm even aware of data work going on globally between the big brands I've mentioned and retailers. So the conversations are live, and sooner or later, a retailer will be held to account from other retailers if they're not in the same collaborative space with their brands. So I think it's the way it should go. At Co-op, one of our key priorities, just as an example, and I'm sure it's similar everywhere else, is what's in the best interests of the shopper, of the member. We're a member-owned organisation. At the end of the day, we should be treating data with respect and ethics, and be quite open with them around what we're doing. So there's certain layers to the process that need to be going. But as I say, I think we'll get, with that train has left the station. I think it's a matter of time.
I love that. There's more of a conversation. Helen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the train has definitely left the station, and I think the collaborative nature that you see now between retailers and CPGs has drastically changed. So, I always steal with pride the great Colin Lewis quote, which is, who's taking who out for lunch? And if I think back to when I started and I was on the supplier side, I can honestly say that in the majority of cases, I was probably taking the retailer out for lunch and probably dinner and their taxi home as well. And now I do feel like it has, genuinely swung to a different position. And I think there's been a real realization, and to Dean's point, is that actually what really matters at the heart is the shopper. And if you can get it right for the shopper collaboratively together, then the sales will come and the category growth will come from that. And it's not just a straight margin stream that it was probably seen previously. So, yes, there's definitely more room to go, but I think that the wheels are certainly set in motion. What I would say is that the retailers who are also doing this really well are the ones who acknowledge that it's not one size fits all from a collaboration and a product and service offering. So yes, you have your P&Gs and Levers of the world who probably want a different solution and have the capabilities and things for a different solution versus maybe mid-sized suppliers, or even maybe, the longer tail and smaller suppliers, who are actually really strategically important as well. So I think the retailers who are looking at their suite of options, which is based on your needs, based on your capabilities, based on what's really important for you for the next kind of 12 months, having that open, and that then they can win across the board, and there's a myriad of pockets of growth to go after.
So, I love that quote as well. And actually, I think the really interesting thing on the who's buying lunch is that what we're seeing is that CPGs have been spending huge sums on trade marketing budgets with grocers and retailers, right? For shopper in-store activation, for trade deals, products on shelves, place of items. This has been going on for a very, very long time. So there's a convergence between trade marketing, shopper marketing, and digital commerce. Digital commerce comes to the party because data is suddenly accessible, right? So the who's buying lunch is that there's actually now 4 more people from the CPG, right, sitting at that table with the retailer. But more importantly, and Helen, this question's predominantly for you to start off with, is that, we've been talking about this convergence and this colliding of two departments. Accessibility of data is becoming better and better. It's nowhere near where it's going to end up being. Do you think we're there? Where do you see that discipline at this moment in time? Because I know that there are CPGs that are completely on it, and there are CPGs that are completely siloed, and they're still two massively different departments. So over to you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a real spectrum of depending on the supplier, frankly, depending on where they are on that curve, also depending on their teams. And being really honest, it can even be down to sort of the functional background of leadership is what I would say. So you've got some suppliers who have their own retail media teams, which I think is a real testament to where the industry has come over the last few years. But then you've got some, it's just down to actually we need to figure out the ways of working between those teams and the processes. At the end of the day, what I would say is it sort of doesn't matter what the model is, so long as the shopper is really at the heart. So, you know, I was taught by a boss years ago, and it always stuck with me, this quote, which is, the shopper only ever sees the execution. So they never see the strategy. They never know which team had sign-off for that. They never know which budget pot it came from. But really what's important as all of this has diverged is that somebody has visibility and ownership of really what's that multi-touch point, you know, omnichannel campaign that the shopper is seeing. Because at the end of the day, when that gets done right, that is what delivers the best ROI and the effectiveness and the sales and everything that follows from that. And therefore, I think it's really important within any organisation, whether it's separate teams or you've got, you know, certain teams accountable, that you have somebody who has that overview and feels the ownership for that. And certainly within SMG, the way that we work with our partnerships is that we do have that in place, because I've seen cases, believe it or not, where you can have the best first-party data kind of enabled campaign off-site, but your competitor can be in store once you, in promotion once you go in store. So it's really catching all those elements and making sure that from a shopper point of view, it all adds up and makes sense.
Dean, interested to hear your thoughts. And actually, before you answer, just really interested to see if, for you as a grocer, what that feels like, right? Yeah. Those different departments, because I know that when you were working with Seth on working through everything with Liveramp, by the way, we have an activation. Jules will kill me if I don't say. So we're just around there. Come and see us afterwards. There was multiple departments. The calls involved like 10, 20 people from Co-op, all from different teams working through that. So how do you navigate that internally?
Well, I think it was 50 people, so Seth just didn't see them all. But yeah, I suppose I'll start with this sort of, you know, almost a broken way of doing it. We know it needs fixing. It reminds me of early in my career when I was at McCann Erickson in the early noughties, whenever, if everyone remembers, social media was kicking off and you got programmatic, and all of a sudden you had these specialists in the corner called digital marketeers in the digital marketing department, and you had digital marketing briefs, and there was a head of digital marketing, and then there was the above the line team, and they got different briefs, and then they used to have a coffee and they go, did you get a brief target in that shopper? Yeah, I got one target in this shopper. I'm getting them in digital channels. Oh, I'm getting them in TV. And it was just, and then they realised that you're talking about the same shopper, and it should be shopper-centric planning, not channel-centric planning. And we're kind of in that channel world with retail media, partly because both within a retailer and within a brand, they tend to be separate budgets, separate teams. There's different leadership, there's different objectives. And we are seeing that get closer together. So I'm aware of some brands that are reorganising themselves and some retailers that are reorganising themselves, so you can just have one conversation instead of 10. I was at the Retail Summit last week, and I remember Lee Roberts mentioned from Dunnhumby that to get everyone around the table, I think he mentioned 8 stakeholders. There's like the e-com lead, the performance marketing lead, the media planner, and that efficiency needs to be sorted out. And I'm from Co-op experience, and that's from a capability arena, starting the partnership with Liveramp. You've got, it might take 6 minutes to go through all the teams, but you've got data governance, data ethics, data engineering, technology, procurement, marketing leads, media leads, loyalty leads. You've got, and then you've got different tiers of those, and then you've got the experts you've got to bring in as well, the SMEs on anything from like Databricks that we use. So it becomes almost suffocating to actually move things on and get things through. So there definitely needs to be a faster response for improving innovation and capabilities on both sides. And I think restructuring and alignment internally is one of the key ways to do that, because we're moving too slowly without it.
Fantastic. Yeah, so we've got 5 minutes left, so they specifically said don't call out the time, but I thought I'd do it anyway.
I did it as well.
So finally, we've got this last point. The industry has seen stratospheric change over the last 12 months, right? Even 24 months. Personally, I think we're just at the cusp of that change. So as a takeaway, and I wanted you to think sort of federated data, privacy-enhanced systems, breaking down walled gardens, all of that type of stuff. Where do you see retail media, the next 3 key things that happen in the next 12 months? Dean?
Yeah, I'll go. Interestingly, I've been doing some. I'm having a nosy overseas and having a look at how different retail media networks present themselves. And if you were to take the description from your dunnhumby, your Nectar, your Kroger, your Walmarts, and remove the brand, you could put any of them in any of them their spots. There's not a lot of differentiation at a B2B brand level. Everyone seems to be fighting for what they can do, the capability shifts, and we have access to this capability, we have that access to that. But there's going to become a moment in time where those capabilities aren't too dissimilar, because everyone's catching up with everyone. So I think the role of the brand in a B2B environment, in a retail network, how do you differentiate on the how you do it, the certain access to different types of shopper, the certain different types of missions you have. Obviously, at Co-op, we're a convenience store. The way you shop a convenience store is very different to the way you shop a large supermarket. So I think the differentiation of the brand behind the retail media network will be a shift. I also think the second one is around that store and digital e-commerce picture, or that digital media picture. I think a lot of the noise and hype has gone into that, and I think it'll stay there. But I think there'll be another look back into the physical estate of retail media, and how data can guide your decisions more of how you optimize within the store environment, and how you can grab shoppers' attention more impactfully, through digital screens and things like that. So I think the store will be the next bit, and that dual approach. And then lastly, I think there'll be more strategic partnerships. I think the brand will be brought into the room more on capabilities, into the conversation. Where do you want to see change? How can we work better together? What things do you want to do that we can't do now? That sort of curated model at brand level, where you adapt your toolkit and your offering around the varied needs of brands. Because an alcohol brand versus a bakery brand have very different requirements on their audience, different frequencies of purchase, different price points. So I think this one-size-fits-all won't last for long. It'll have to change. Those are my 3.
I think the real truth is that it's the advancement of tech that has really driven this explosion of retail media, because retailers have been sat on gold mines of data for years, in some cases over 20 years, but it's the tech that has made that data incredibly useful. And I think we will just continue to see that grow. And I think it's quite mind-blowing what I can see kind of coming down the line, particularly from the States. It's a little bit more advanced than us on that front. So, of course, there's going to be more kind of advancements on tech, advancements on data collaboration, and particularly in the digital space. That would be my number 1. I completely agree with Dean on the store. I think we've been very focused on digital for the last 18 months, but really, when 80% of purchases are still made in store, I think we're going to see a lot more come in that space. And it's not just the digital screens, but really how can you really understand what the shopper is doing in store, the insights, the real-time insights you can get from that within their shopping journeys, and how can you influence them through real-time personalization within that. And then the last one I'd say is maybe not 12 months actually, because I think maybe the retailers aren't quite ready for it yet, but I can see within the next, I'm going to call it 2 to 5 years, a real change in cross-data collaboration. And imagine a world where suppliers and agencies can use aggregated platforms to really plan national campaigns against, a myriad of different audiences, a myriad of different touch points across a state in the UK. And I think we will get to a place like that once retailers are up to a certain speed with their own networks.
Love that one, cross-data collaboration. Thank you both for today. It's been absolutely amazing.